So, Billy, what'd you play, man?
Some college in Louisiana. Things didn't work out.
Yeah, and you've been hustling ever since, huh?
Nobody knows me here in California. I figured I could work the courts a little.
Then I have a business proposal for you. I mean, it could mean a lot more cash than this chump change you're making now.
What is it?
There's a 2-on-2 tournament next week, sponsored by some businesses.
You want me to run with you?
Yep. But in the meantime, we could be making a little bit extra change, as if you don't mind hustling. I know you don't mind hustling.
A pair of basketball players try to hustle their way to easy money and rebound their lives.
Boo!
Special guest Daron from the Board Games Are for Losers podcast returns to talk about the stupidest sports-related injury ever, the your mom insult that's really a compliment, and where you can find a Sizzler in 2020. Then we find out if White Men Can't Jump stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glut, and Alan says as a father blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have to say, do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time podcast. I'm Alan Noah.
And I'm James Brief.
And we have a very special guest joining us today. Welcome back to the show, Daron from the Board Games Are for Losers podcast.
Thanks, guys. I'm thrilled to be back. It has been a long time.
It has been a long time. And the last 3 times you were on the show, we were recording live at Nick's Marathon. But we didn't do that last year, and we haven't had you back since, what was it? I guess Nick's Marathon 2018?
Yeah, so a year and a half, I think.
Wow. And now not only are we not live, but we're not even in the same room together.
And not friends. Wait.
Oh.
Sorry.
Was it something James did?
Yes, of course.
So how's the social distancing going in Pennsylvania, Daron?
Well, not bad. I don't think we have it quite as bad as you guys do in New York, for sure. But people seem to be doing well. I mean, family's healthy. We're getting paid, and, it's just managing the kids' schoolwork and stuff. So, everything's good here. No problem.
You have kids?
Yes.
You should talk about it. James loves hearing about kids.
James?
It's fine.
So, Daron, what have you been up to while you're under quarantine?
Well, I'm still sort of working, but mostly it's just, teaching the kids homeschool, which is awful. Like, I can't imagine being a teacher. God bless all teachers, and of course doctors and stuff, but like teachers especially, because it's really, really difficult. But, we've just been making the best out of it and doing projects around the house and doing what we can.
Well, you're really educating your children because I've seen on Twitter that you showed your kids Star Wars for the first time.
Yes. So my son, who is 7, and my daughter, who's 5. So my son had, for the longest time, not wanted to watch it.
What?
I don't know. All his friends were watching it at school, and he didn't want to watch it.
The big question is, did you watch this in chronological or release ordered? Meaning, did you show them episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, 3, or did you show them 1 through 6?
So what I did was I took one 6-sided die and rolled it, and then whatever that number was. No, so I consulted the interwebs prior to doing this, and conventional wisdom said 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Although somebody tried to convince me to do 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, then 6, which I don't know if you've ever heard that before.
Yeah, the machete order.
Yes, that was exactly it. But we went 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I feel like that worked well. Now I actually want to watch 4, 5, 6 again after having just watched 3, but the kids don't want to do that.
See, I always did argue that the real order was 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, it's important to watch the original trilogy again after the prequels. But wait, what about the sequels? 7, 8, 9?
So I've never seen them. So
really?
I've been waiting to rewatch 1 through 6 with the kids so we can all watch them together. So the silver lining to this pandemic is that we've now got to watch the Star Wars movies.
That's very interesting because my theory is that with the general reception of the sequel trilogy as a whole, now that it's pretty much over, it is over, I think the prequels, for all their faults, are going to be seen in a much better light than they were.
Well, so I will say this. I thought 1 was obviously garbage, but I really liked 3 more than I remembered liking it. And I think the kids enjoyed it too. They didn't fall under the spell of Jar Jar Binks in episode 1. I don't think they liked it much either, but 2 and 3 were much better than I had remembered them from years and years ago.
But Darth Maul was so cool.
Yeah, badass.
Like, what a wasted opportunity. He should have been the big bad of the first trilogy, of the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, I agree.
But he does come back in Star Wars The Clone Wars, which is what I'm watching with my kids over quarantine.
Spoiler.
I guess, spoiler. They promo that a lot, but it's good that you're making productive use out of your time.
Well, it's
productive with air quotes.
So I had 2 questions I wanted to ask, 2 serious questions I wanted to ask from Star Wars nerds.
Please.
So at the end of episode 3, why does Obi-Wan not kill Anakin, Darth Vader, when he's like melting at the side of the lava pit and he's clearly near death?
I think I can answer that.
Okay.
Because they're friends, and it's wrong to kill your friends. Hacking off their arms and legs and leaving them to die on a pile of molten lava, that's okay. But you don't want to actually kill him.
But leaving them to die is fine, right? That's clearly what he was doing.
Limbless next to a river of lava. Yeah, that's more humane.
Okay, so you see that that's kind of weird, but obviously necessary in order to set up the remainder of the movies.
Right, yes.
Okay.
I think also he kind of saw that what was left over was not even Anakin, his friend. Judge whether he should have killed him or not, whether or not that's, the merciful thing to do or not.
Okay, fair enough. And the second question, I guess we'll make this my final question. At the end of episode 6, when they see the holograms of like the dead Jedis, you see Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, right?
No, you see Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda. And those are not holograms, those are Force ghosts. Big difference.
Okay, fair enough. What was before the prequels were made? What was there in place of Anakin?
It's actually just another actor entirely, that you've never actually met this guy. The guy who was the Force Ghost at the end is supposed to be Anakin. But that's one thing I think the special editions, or the subsequent special editions, did right. And they later took away the old man Anakin and substituted Hayden Christensen as the Force Ghost in there.
The actor's name is Sebastian Shaw, not Sebastian Stan, who plays the Winter Soldier in the Marvel movies. You see him when Luke takes off Vader's mask. It's that guy. And then you see him as a ghost and he looks totally different. And you're just supposed to know that that's Anakin.
All right. But that answers every single question I've ever had about Star Wars. Excellent.
Excellent.
So let's move on from Star Wars to White Men Can't Jump. Now, Daron, you requested to do this movie on the podcast a while back. Why is that?
I can't remember where I heard the movie mentioned. I don't know if you guys mentioned it briefly on your podcast. It would have been a couple months ago, or I was listening to some of my other favorite movie podcasts that look back at movies that stand the test of time. I don't know if it was
Wait. Huh?
We probably mentioned it when we did Passenger 57. We could have mentioned it then. And have we ever done a Woody Harrelson film?
Kingpin?
No, we haven't done Kingpin yet.
So either way, I heard it mentioned in some regard. Maybe it was in person. And I've done The Rock, Rounders, and Naked Gun. All movies I was certain would stand the test of time. And obviously every sane person thought stood the test of time. No comments, please. No comments.
Let the record show I'm giving Daron the middle finger.
So I figured, you know what? I would like to do a movie that I really have no clue. Like I enjoyed and I haven't watched in 20 plus years, I don't think. And I thought, this would be fun. And the second reason is, I don't know if you guys know, but I did play some street ball in high school. Like I stopped playing like organized basketball. And then when I was in high school, my friends and I, many of whom you've met, we organized a 2-on-2 league and would play pickup basketball. The difference between what they did and what we did is we lowered the rim to 7 feet and played with the small basketball so we could dunk on it. But we were basically the same thing. So I thought that would be a nice way to relive my days as a street baller, so to speak.
Nice. I don't think I did know that, actually. So, all right. That makes sense.
You want to hear the funniest part of that? You guys know my friend Brian?
Sure.
So the league kind of ended in a disaster when Brian cut his head open on a ladder, chasing a... He was chasing a ball, and it was like into a carport, and there was a ladder hanging on the other side. He wasn't even close. He didn't even come close to saving it. He just smacked his head and split his head completely open. So that's kind of how the league died, I think, eventually.
I mean, that is the stupidest sports-related injury I've ever heard in my life.
It's great. It is great.
Wow. Okay, so I guess this movie made you nostalgic for those good old days?
Yeah, I'm seeing my friend bleeding out on the ground. It was great.
All right, so James, why don't you just refresh our collective memory about what this movie's about?
Yeah, I will. And I was with you. I was excited to see this film. I haven't seen this film in at least 10, 15 years. So I remembered small parts, including the Alex Trebek related parts. But this film, in case you haven't seen it in a while, this film is about Billy Hoyle, played by Woody Harrelson. He's a white basketball player, and he hustles the courts of Los Angeles playing basketball. And after he pulls one over on fellow hustler Sidney Dean, played by Wesley Snipes, they become partners. And Billy and Sydney have to learn to trust each other as they try to earn enough money to provide better lives for their significant others. Sydney's wife wants a safer home for their family, and Billy's girlfriend Gloria, played by Rosie Perez, has another plan to pay off the gangsters that they're indebted to. She wants to win big on Jeopardy. And along the way, they learn lessons about life and what it means to win. I don't get an awe for that.
If you would have said learn to love, I would have given you an awe, but you said learn to win.
Okay, let's try this. And along the way, they all learn lessons about life, what it means to win, and maybe a little bit about themselves.
Boo.
And maybe a little bit about love.
Aw.
And that is how you podcast.
Now, I remember this coming out, and I don't know that I saw it in the theater. I probably didn't. I feel like I must have seen it a couple years later on home video. But I feel like this was a pretty big hit at the box office, or at least a modest hit.
Yeah, it came out on March 27th, 1992, and had a $30 million budget, and it opened at number one with $14.7 million, wound up being $76 million domestically. So a big hit. Interestingly, it only made $90 million worldwide. And I can see this kind of film not necessarily translating outside of America, because imagine the subtitles you have to put down for "we're going to Sizzler," and like these kind of things. It just doesn't translate to Portuguese, I
mean, even the title of the movie would probably be awkwardly translated in some languages, like "White Men Can't Jump."
It's probably got great titles in other languages.
Probably. So when the movie actually starts, it's got like the Fox fanfare, but it's kind of like a funky version of it.
Oh, yeah, that was awesome. I was like, this is synthesized 90s music. It was perfect. Obviously, it doesn't stand the test of time, but it was like a good twist on the opening music. Wait,
you're saying that funk doesn't stand the test of time, or the funky Fox fanfare doesn't stand the test of time?
I think the Fox fanfare, whatever you just said.
But the opening credits are also in a fun jingle. It's a doo-wop.
It's like these singers from Venice Beach who show up a couple times in the movie. Have you guys ever been to Venice Beach?
I don't think so.
I think in passing once, but it's supposed to be like this really weird place, and I think they do a good job of establishing that. Like, you have the homeless guy stretching, and then like the muscle beach guy lifting weights, and the rollerblader.
I have been to Venice Beach a few times, and yeah, it is this like very weird, quirky, bohemian kind of place where there's big, huge dudes wearing tiny Speedos, like on rollerblades, and people just wearing the loudest outfits you can imagine. And yeah, it's a weird place. And I don't know if it's real that there's this like, intense street basketball scene there, but I could totally believe that there would be.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't even really matter that it's set in Venice originally, because it kind of takes place all over LA. And I think it's kind of realistic that there would be a street ball scene in various neighborhoods in LA. And they don't really focus too much on the fact that it's in Venice other than that establishing shot.
Right, right. And Billy is this sort of new guy in town, and he looks like a goofy white dude surrounded by all of these cooler black guys. And it's pretty clear early on that he's trying to hustle these guys.
When you say cooler black guys, and you're absolutely right, these guys are pretty cool. Wesley Snipes he's awesome in this film. But this film came out in 1992, so reflecting the fashions of 1991. And I've mentioned this before, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but in the early 90s, before the grunge stuff kind of took over, people in the 90s wore bright colors. Men wore bright colors. Woody Harrelson's wearing a tie-dye cap most of this film. Today, men are in much more like subdued pastel, darker colors, I'd say.
Yeah, I think that opening scene of them playing basketball and all trash talking, there were some bizarre outfits. Like the one guy was wearing purple spandex and a green and black striped shirt or something. It was awful, but I guess that was what it was at the time. That's what people rocked. I know you guys had those outfits too, right?
Yes, of course. Those shorts, I think those are what we used to call bicycle shorts, right?
Yeah.
Those like, they're kind of like elastic that go down to like the bottom of your thighs, and these guys are wearing and playing basketball. It was so different.
Wait, you guys aren't wearing bicycle shorts right now?
Yes.
No.
I just assumed we all were.
So what did you guys think of that like initial trash talking scene when they're going back and forth, just spitting all sorts of jokes, a lot of mom jokes? What did you think of that scene?
I mean, I thought it was kind of a throwback because I remember like when your mom jokes were like a big thing. I don't know if it was a big thing in the early 90s or if it was just that's when I was like in middle school and that's what middle school boys say to one another. But it made me laugh, like hearing those jokes. And I read today that apparently a lot of those were improvised. And like, the actors kind of brought their own Your Mama jokes with them to set.
Yeah, I saw that too. That's kind of cool. What I had the question about was your mom is an astronaut. Why is that an insult? Can somebody explain that to me? Like, wouldn't that be good?
That would be a big compliment, yes.
So James would have just said if he was on the court, he would have been like, thank you, let's get back to the game.
I mean, I did kind of laugh when they were talking about like the Sizzler repeatedly, that's like their idea of like the fanciest restaurant. I mean, it's been a while since I've been to Venice. I'm sure they have better restaurants than Sizzler. I mean, even an In-N-Out burger is better than a Sizzler.
True.
And for people that have never been to Sizzler, I think they still exist, and they're basically a chain of all-you-can-eat buffets, and these are not your fancy Las Vegas-style buffets. I mean, this is like the macaroni and cheese that you could scoop onto your plate with an ice cream scoop would have like a thick skin that you had to burrow underneath. You know what I mean?
Ugh. Pretty gross.
I just pulled it up. There are Sizzlers still around. They're all located like in the western part of the country, except for one in Florida. But like the East Coast and the middle of the country is devoid of Sizzlers. But there are a lot in California still.
Good fact.
Helpful information if you're looking for a Sizzler. Like I miss going out to eat. Going to restaurants because of this quarantine. But you would have to pay me a lot of money to go to a Sizzler.
Really? You wouldn't go if it was there?
No.
I personally, I mean, I tried not to waste food before, but I mean, nowadays I don't waste any food. And I was thinking imagine like in the before days, like I totally want to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet. I absolutely do. Like I would go to something better than Sizzler, but if I were guaranteed a safe Sizzler, hell yeah, I would go right now.
Safe
I mean,
Sizzler.
Al is trying to be very snobby about Sizzler when this guy loves the occasional White Castle.
White Castle is a million times better than Sizzler.
I would not say that a Sizzler is 1/1,000,000th the quality of White Castle, Al.
I would definitely rather eat a sack of 10 White Castle burgers than all you can eat Sizzler. For sure.
I think you guys are going to lose a lot of listeners on the West Coast after this.
I'm saying yes to Sizzler. But anyway, like Wesley Snipes says, shut up your Diet Coke drinking ass.
Why is that an insult?
I don't know. It's something Wesley Snipes says, and you drink Diet Coke. So
I do.
So I wanted to quote him. Shut up your Diet Coke drinking ass.
And speaking of food-related lines that don't make a lot of sense, the ain't no thing but a chicken wing on a string from Burger King. I never got that. Who serves chicken wings on strings?
Well, nobody. I guess that's why. Is that why it's an insult? Because nobody does that?
I mean, it's not an insult. It's just like a thing that they say. Like, ain't no thing, I get. Ain't no thing but a chicken wing. Okay. But ain't no thing but a chicken wing on a string from Burger King. I mean, Burger King has never sold chicken wings. But if they did, like, it would be extra stupid for them to put them on strings.
I think if you broke down the string of insults in like Reddit word for word in that first scene, you probably just don't want to do it. You probably just want to hear it as a totality and like just drink it in and not worry about what was actually said and know that it was funny in some ways. You heard a couple things that were funny and you just got to move on from there.
And not only funny, Sydney, played by Wesley Snipes, he sells it. He's cool too. Like, I like this guy. I don't really get ain't no thing but a chicken wing on a string from Burger King, but I like this guy. So there's a hustle, and you see he's betting like $100 or so against Woody Harrelson's character, and it turns out that Woody's pretty awesome, and they go one-on-one afterwards, trying to shoot from the top of the key. It's like basically a three-pointer, and Woody's able to get 5 in a row, and Sydney's only able to get 4 in a row. And there's a great line right before Woody lands the 5th one, and he whispers in Sydney's ear, because the whole time he was kind of like, I don't really know how to play basketball. And he says to Sydney, he goes, I've hustled guys a lot better than you before.
Yeah, that was a good scene, and they were playing for $62, by the way, because that's how much he won. I was like, that really wasn't a lot of money. Like, that was his day of work, and he got $62.
Right. But then the stakes kind of go up from there. After that scene, we're introduced to Gloria, who is Billy's girlfriend, played by Rosie Perez. And we see that she's got this other way to get rich quick. You know, while Billy's doing the basketball hustles, she's studying to be on Jeopardy, which is a plot point that I had completely forgotten about, having not seen this movie in a long time. But as soon as she started talking about memorizing facts, I remembered the whole foods that start with the letter Q. That's just a memorable part of this movie.
The hotel room has like maps and almanacs all over the place. Like, they're staying in this $20 a night hotel room, and she's got like books and encyclopedias all over the place. I don't know how that's a good get rich quick scheme to get on Jeopardy, but yeah, whatever. That's her thing.
Right. And Sydney comes to Billy's hotel, and he has like a proposition, like, let's you and I team up. And they successfully hustle some other guys. I think it was like about $250, something like that. When they're like on their way home after that game, they have this conversation in the car because Billy puts on Jimi Hendrix, and they get into a debate about if white people can really hear Jimi Hendrix or if they can just listen to Jimi Hendrix.
You're listening, but you're not hearing him.
But I love how the entire conversation is invalidated by, it's not Jimi Hendrix, it's a tape of the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Gloria points out that 5 of the 6 people in the band, except for Jimi Hendrix, were white. So, like, Sydney is kind of like going crazy. He's like not accepting that that was true. He's like, no, that was not a white bass player. I don't even know if it's true or not. I just thought it was very funny.
I mean, you really have to know about music to know the other guys in the Jimi Hendrix Experience. I mean, the Jimi Hendrix Experience is all about Jimi Hendrix. It's not like, oh, I like John and Paul of the Beatles, but I know about George and Ringo too. Like, most other people can't name anyone else in the Jimi Hendrix Experience. If you're listening to this podcast right now and off the top of your head, you can name other members of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, tweet us at Test of Time Pod. No cheating allowed.
Will we accept White Guy 1 and White Guy 2 and White Guy 3?
No, I need first and last names.
So Al, you talked about that first hustle that they did. Explain what the hustle was. Like, how did they scam people on the court?
So the hustle that they do is Sydney is saying, I could beat you. I could win with anyone you pick. You pick the teammate, and I know that the two of us will be able to beat you. And they pick Billy, who's just kind of sitting there looking, as white and nerdy as could be.
And they say, give him the chump. They point to Billy.
Yeah. And I mean, he's really playing the part where he's like, who, me? And he starts doing like his like aerobic stretches, and they're all like making fun of him for that. But, realistically, that's probably a good idea. You want to stretch first.
Well, yeah, it's important. And then they say to him, hey man, you want to run? And then what does he respond?
You mean play basketball?
I love that line.
It really does depend on them picking him, to be honest. Like, really, there wasn't anyone on the court that they might have picked that could have been worse, that Sydney would not have beaten these guys, because it's not like they won like 10-3. These guys were good basketball players, and they're still lucky that they picked the white guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. You have to kind of take a leap of faith that, like, okay, they're gonna pick the white guy. They could have picked the really fat black guy that was next to him, and then Sydney would have been like, no, what about that guy? Don't you want to pick the chump?
True, because I'm just talking about how in the next one, this one is okay, but the next one, he's literally in the background coming down a ramp of a subway car. He happens to be holding a basketball. They don't even know he's playing. And they're like, that's the guy you're going to gamble $1,700 with. Like, that one I thought was a little far-fetched. They should have waited at least until he was like, stretching like an idiot on the court. Although I endorse him stretching as a physician.
I did think that exact same thing, James, because I was like, this is before cell phones. It's not like Billy can text Sydney and be like, okay, I'm on my way. What if the trains were late? Like, what if he just, got delayed somewhere, and then he's making this, you can pick any guy here, but let's just wait a little bit, see if someone even worse shows up,
Yeah, that guy's not a big enough loser. Just wait. I think a train's coming. Maybe somebody will get off that train.
Exactly.
That's totally not a setup, guys.
What I really like in that first hustle is when they make the bet and the guy's like, oh, hold on, I got to get the $500 from my car. He goes back, he gets a gun out of his glove box, puts on a mask, walks into the convenience store and tries to rob it. And the guy's like, Raymond, come on, I know it's you. And the guy, he's like, all right, can I just have $500? He's like, no. It's like, all right, do you want to buy this gun? There's some crazy people out here. And so he winds up selling his gun to get the $250 to play in the game.
Right. I mean, that's a great little scene. It's really funny when the guy is like, all right, fine, I'll sell it to you for $300. And the guy's like, no, $250. And he's like, well, fine, now you're robbing me. like he's trying to insult him, like after he just like stuck a gun in his face and tried to rob his friend. But it turns out in that second hustle scene, it's a setup and kind of like a double cross where Sydney and his friends are hustling Billy, which Billy didn't realize that's what was happening. It was Gloria who figured it out. And she like goes over to Sydney's house and knocks on the door and demands the money back from Sydney's wife. And she says no, because she desperately wants to get out of their shitty apartment. But they decide to team up again and try to win this tournament for a lot more money. And having not seen this movie in a while, I thought that like the rest of the movie was going to be building up to that tournament. But no, that tournament happens in the next scene, and you're still only like halfway through the movie.
Yeah, it seems to have gotten to the pinnacle, or what you think is going to be the pinnacle of the movie, quickly. And another thing they established when that confrontation at their house is Gloria explains the story of why they're in debt. The money they owe to the Stookie brothers or the Snooky brothers?
I think it's supposed to be Stucci, like Stucci, and it's an Italian name, but Rosie Perez pronounced it like Stucky sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not exactly clear who these mobsters are.
And speaking of Rosie Perez, I mean, I just love Gloria. She is absolutely in love with Billy. I see him so different now than I did back then, but I love this conversation that she has with him. Like, she was reading in some Cosmo or one of these like women's magazines, because it's 1992, and when Billy is saying, you know, I'm thirsty, I'll get you a glass of water, and she's like, I don't want you just to get me a glass of water, I want you to sympathize, I want you to say, Gloria, I too know what it feels like to have a dry mouth. Like, I thought that was really funny because, you know, Gloria's very well-meaning and she says some very insightful things, but some of the stuff is, you know, I totally laughed at.
When I saw that scene, I laughed because I had an ex-girlfriend that we had this very same debate, not about water, but it was about something else. She said something. I was like, oh, well, let me do this for you. She's like, I don't want you to fix my problems. I want you to just listen to my problems. I'm like, but I could go over there and get what you need or do what you need. She's like, no, we're not together anymore.
Have you guys ever seen that video of the woman who's like complaining about the pain that she's feeling, and the husband or boyfriend is just the whole time kind of like, you know, I think I could. And she's like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. And then like the camera pulls back and the woman has like a nail in her head. And the husband's like, I could take the nail out. And she's like, I don't want to hear about the nail. I just want you to understand that I'm having a problem where like my sweaters keep getting caught. And he's like just in pain because he wants to fix the problem, but she doesn't want him to. It's pretty funny. It's funnier than I'm describing it.
No, that's great because that's a real thing that happens. And when I saw this scene again, I was like, oh my God, that happened to me. It's perfect.
So Gloria and Sydney's wife, they come up with this plan that Billy and Sydney are going to team up for the tournament. And I thought the tournament scene was going to be like this big climactic thing. It's really kind of not. There's a lot of trash talking back and forth because Billy is trying to piss off the other guys and kind of make Sydney angry because he plays better when he's angry. And Billy and Sydney win. But then Billy and Sydney get into this fight after the game because Billy is feeling insecure that he can't dunk. And they do that thing where they say the title of the movie in the movie where Sydney's like, hey man, don't sweat it. White men can't jump.
The argument comes from stuff that they have been discussing before because Billy keeps saying this thing. He says, you'd rather lose ugly than win pretty.
No, it's lose pretty than win ugly.
Well, no, you're right. He doesn't want to win ugly because Sydney is doing all these real fancy behind the back passes when he doesn't have to, and they look really sweet. But he's doing a lot of fancy basketball stuff, and Billy's like, look, we're playing like for money here. Like, don't do any of those stupid fancy things. So that leads into, why didn't you dunk? And he's like, you know, I could dunk. It just wasn't necessary there. And then Billy's ego gets in the way, and they find a hoop, and it's really cringy watching him because I understand Billy a lot different than I did back then. I didn't really understand why he did something so stupid, and now I get it. He's a total loser. I mean, he's an idiot who's just like every opportunity he has so many outs and he just self-destructs. And even Sydney is like, don't do this. This is stupid. Sydney's going to take his money if he bets it. But even Sydney's like, don't make this stupid bet. And it's all 110% Billy's fault.
Is it that he's a loser or is it that he's a compulsive gambler?
Well, no, I mean, he's self-destructive. He keeps having outs, like, several times. He eventually figures out a way out with the gangsters. He figures out a way out of a life of hustling basketball. He figures out a way out of these hotel rooms, and Sydney has a way out of their crappy living space so they could rent a nice home in a nice suburb. But Sydney doesn't blow it. And Billy, he's just one of those guys. I've just met people like that. Like in Parenthood, I mean, he's a little better version of that brother who's just like, he's just kind of a fuck up. I mean, he's a little more lovable than that guy, but you know what I mean, Al? The guy from Parenthood?
Yeah, Larry.
Yes, he's just kind of the fuck up uncle, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but after Billy loses all of his money to Sydney over this can he dunk thing, which he can't, Gloria leaves him, and Billy has this plan to win her back by getting her on Jeopardy. And the way he does that is Sydney has a friend who works as a security guard on the lot. And he says that he will get Gloria onto the lot if Billy can make this like really long hook shot, which he does. But I still didn't get how that works, because in the next scene, Gloria is a contestant on Jeopardy. Like, if he gets her onto the lot, neat, that's cool. Maybe she can meet Alex Trebek if she's lucky, but that's not how you become a contestant on Jeopardy.
All you have to know is that this guy works on the lot of whatever production company makes Jeopardy, and he can get her into the audition, which she is going to win. That's how I took it. But the thing is, I used to think, why doesn't Gloria take him back after he got her on Jeopardy? And he never tells her that he gets her on Jeopardy. Because when he goes into her dressing room after, he's like, you were right, they finally called. I thought that was sweet, but another, like, stupid thing. He should have said, look, I risked my car, which was the last piece of possession that Billy owns, and I risked it all on you. And I also did it with the one thing that I can do well, which is basketball. So I thought he was blowing it by not telling her what he did for her, because I thought it was very sweet what he did for her.
Yeah, I agree with Al that it seemed a big jump for him to get her onto the lot and then she shows up at Jeopardy. They probably just needed a throwaway line about how she auditioned and then was so good that she got on. But it kind of didn't make sense at the time. But I agree that he took this huge risk, which is another stupid gamble, because he could have lost his car on probably a 1 in 100 hook shot, 3/4 length hook shot from the other side of the court. And then he gets her on the show and he doesn't tell her that.
Regardless, she does great on Jeopardy. There is a category about foods that start with the letter Q, which in my research today, I did read they actually did use on Jeopardy years later. And Trebek made some comment like, and if you've seen the movie White Men Can't Jump, this will sound familiar. But she wins. She does take Billy back. He writes this song for her about he'll understand what it means to be thirsty and he won't ever give her water. But then Sydney and his family are robbed, so now he's desperate for money, and he tracks down Billy and says that these two legends of the Venice Beach courts, the King and the Duck, they're back at this basketball court, and Sydney asks Billy to do one more hustle, one more job, and help him out. And Billy says to Gloria, hey, I kind of need to do this thing for my friend just one last time. And Gloria leaves him. And that's one thing I did remember from this movie, is that shot of her rollerblading away. And that is it. Like, that is her last appearance in this movie. There's no one final goodbye after that. She says she's leaving. She means it. She is gone because, like you were saying, James, Billy is just so self-destructive. He has to implode. He can't resist the opportunity. And then later, even Sydney is like, well, I presented you with an opportunity. You shouldn't have listened to me. You should have listened to her. Why did you listen to me? And he's got a point.
Yeah, Gloria even flat out tells him, you gamble my money, we're through. And he's like, oh, I think she'll still stay around for me. Like, she told him explicitly what was going to happen. And he was surprised the next day when she was gone. And it was so obvious.
I kind of saw this when I was younger as kind of one of those sports movies where in the end he wins the sport and like, what the fuck? She didn't come back to him. Because, in Major League, like, he was a total creep, but he wins the pennant at the end. So of course Rene Russo comes back to him. Like, of course now we look at it like, no, that doesn't make you come back. And it makes so much more sense. And she had said the ridiculous thing about drinking water, and I too know what it feels like to be thirsty. And you agree with Billy when he's like, shut up. But she had also said this like kind of flaky thing about sometimes when you win, you lose, and sometimes when you lose, you win. So even though there's this glorious like win that he gets in basketball, and he does have a great final point where he makes a dunk at proving that this white man can jump, in a lesser film, she would have gone back to him. I think that might be a reason why I didn't watch this film for like 20 years. I didn't like that ending as a kid. I kind of wanted the saccharine like love story ending, and I like it so much better now because Gloria deserves so much better than this guy, even though she loves him.
He winds up paying off the Stucci brothers with the money he won, and they do this gag where they take a picture of him with like what looks like blood coming out of his mouth, make it look like he's dead so they could use to intimidate future victims that they're indebted to. So that was like the summing up that whole part of the story.
Right. All right. Well, that is the end of the movie. So, Daron, our very special guest, what do you think? Does White Men Can't Jump stand the test of time?
Well, first, you forgot to point out how the movie ends on your favorite 90s thing.
Oh, a freeze frame.
Of course. So,
right.
Obviously stands the test of time. All right, so what do I think about this movie? So I went in with pretty low expectations. My recollection of the movie and what I thought was going to be, it was going to be more slapstick. I thought it was going to be like a Chris Rock, like, well, here's why white people are lame, and this is why Wesley Snipes is so cool, and this is why Woody Harrelson is so lame. I think what I liked about it is the jokes that they made, the racial jokes, quote unquote, were actually smartly written and relevant to the movie. They were part of the trash talk. They didn't go overboard. I think the only time they erred a little bit on that was during that Brotherhood tournament. If you remember, that announcer, who's that like nerdy white guy, is like, oh my God, this is going to get bad because there's a lot of black people here basically fighting. Like he was that slapstick kind of humor. So I agree with James about Woody Harrelson's character was appropriately unlikable. He was a loser, and I don't think you were supposed to root for him because I think in the end he made so many stupid decisions that he shouldn't have gotten the girl, and I think that was an appropriate way to end the movie. I think this is more of a movie about hustling and conning rather than a sports movie because quite honestly the sports was almost irrelevant. It was more about the hustle and about the they're kind of bonding over the sport. And so I still think you can still run a movie like that today. Like that hustle kind of con buddy partner thing would still work. I really liked Rosie Perez. She was great in the role as that sassy Puerto Rican and just puts Billy in his place and is a really good character. And then I really liked the soundtrack. It was a mix of R&B and hip hop. It worked really well with the film in establishing that opening shot in Venice Beach. So I thought that was pretty good. What I didn't like, or what I don't think held up, were the 90s clothes were obviously ridiculous. I think the insults were probably bordering on not standing the test of time if you really broke them down. And like, my mother's an astronaut doesn't really work. Like James said, he would find that as a compliment. I thought some of the basketball scenes, like the slow-mo, everything was slow motion when they play basketball. I didn't like that. I think they could have done that better. And I didn't really like the Stucci brothers storyline. They could have done something more clever. The Stucci brothers were slapstick characters that didn't need to be there. And I kind of didn't love the Jeopardy storyline, although it holds up because it's a realistic thing that could still happen. So overall, I think this movie does hold up because it exceeded my expectations. I think if I would have went into it with really high expectations, I would have been disappointed. But I went in thinking the worst, and really it was a good movie. It was pretty well done. and they didn't pull any punches, and I think they just put together a solid movie.
All right, good verdict. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that do stand up in this film. For me, I think the Trebek and Jeopardy scene holds up fantastic. Not only do I think Trebek looks fantastic, like he aged so well that he doesn't look 28 years younger. I think he looks great. I love the character Gloria. And this movie has a lot to do with, I guess, class. All of these people, when we meet them in the beginning, they're in a lower socioeconomic class. And all four of these people, Woody and Sydney and both of their respective partners, they all want to get out of it. Gloria, she's trying to get out with her knowledge, and Sydney's wife, she's really no nonsense. She's been saving, and she understands the games that Sydney has to do, but they have a very particular plan to get out. And Sydney, he's very meticulous. We didn't talk about it, but Sydney has like 3 jobs on the side. He has like an interior decorator job on the side. Like, I give him a lot of credit. Like, he sounds like the kind of guy that I think today in 2020, I think Sydney is very successful. And I think that Gloria, she was able to get out and she was able to be very successful. There's an implication that she's probably going to be a 5-time winner. Back then, you only won 5 times and you were kicked out, not like Ken Jennings. So she's saying, I'm probably going to win this and I'm going to win the Tournament of Champions and I'll probably walk out with like $80,000. She's going to have a very good life for herself. And I agree with you, Daron. The Stucci brothers side plot is stupid, but I think a lesser film, and maybe the film that I wanted as a kid, would have been something like, at the end, Billy doesn't gamble Gloria's money, but he finds a way. He's like, listen, Stucci brothers, if I win this tournament, Sydney's gonna get his money, you guys leave us alone, and everything's gonna be great. And then they would win, and everything would work out for everyone. Billy wouldn't get any money at the end, but he'd be debt-free. And I guess I like it better that at least Sydney, I think it implies that Sydney gets out. The movie, to me, just aged very well. The fashion is ridiculous, but kind of fun to watch. The soundtrack's good. I thought it was a fun film. Yeah, so I think this film, White Man Can't Jump, does stand the test of time. I do want to finally say that I did varsity track in high school, and I did high jump and long jump. I'm just going to leave it at that. But Al, what do you think? Does White Man Can't Jump, does that stand the test of time?
I mean, they're very clearly talking about dunking a basketball, not that you can't, like, jump up at all. I think you know that on some level, James. I think you do. I'm going to start by asking just a question to both of you guys. Have either of you seen Uncut Gems?
Like the movie or the thing?
The movie, not just, like, a pile of uncut gems lying around.
Then no.
James, you haven't either?
No, I've not seen Uncut Gems.
Well, the reason I ask is because I did see that back in December when you were allowed to go to movies. And first off, I recommend that movie. Adam Sandler is phenomenal in that. But watching White Men Can't Jump, I was thinking about Uncut Gems because Adam Sandler in that movie plays a compulsive gambler. And it is similar to Billy in this movie where he just can't stop making these terrible decisions and putting money on these bets when he really shouldn't, when he could have just been like, hey, I had a good day, I won, and I will be happy with my winnings. No, he's constantly pushing his luck. So part of me thinks, well, could they make another movie where the protagonist is a compulsive gambler? Yes, they could, and they just did, and it got awards buzz, although no actual like Oscar nominations, which was kind of a crime. But definitely some parallels to Uncut Gems, and I recommend that movie. I think you guys would like it. And also about basketball, too. But I do disagree with you guys about the Stuccis being kind of stupid. I think they tie into this movie's theme about everybody's got to hustle, right? Billy and Sydney have a very obvious hustle. Basketball, lying, ripping people off for money. Gloria's got to hustle in terms of her goal to get on Jeopardy. The Stucci brothers are these wannabe gangsters. They're not real mafia guys. They walk around with Polaroid pictures of their quote unquote victims that they show other potential victims of, like, hey, look what's going to happen to you if you don't give us the money. That's not something that real mafia guys do. These guys are wannabes. Even that guy Raymond, who we were talking about earlier, where he's like, okay, I'm going to go to my car and get the money. And then he goes to the convenience store and tries to rob him. Everybody's got to hustle. Everybody in this movie is trying to work some angle to get rich quick. So I think that the Stoochies, on one level, yeah, it's sort of like a stupid plot thing of like, oh, we've got to pay off these gangsters who are following us. That's kind of like a trope. But I think this movie's actually pretty clever in the way it handles those guys. So I kind of appreciated that. I also did sort of like the recurring theme of the movie about when you should listen and what you can hear and how you can win but still lose. And I think those themes really continue throughout the whole movie, and it really comes into play at the end where Billy is hearing what Gloria is saying, but he isn't listening to her. And when he wins in that final game against the Duck and the King, but he really loses, I just wish they didn't spell it out. I know I've said this a million times on the podcast, but I hate when they have like these very smart themes in a movie and then they just spell it out for you in the final scene. Hey, audience, get it? Get it? Did you get it?
Oh, I lost.
Oh, I won, but I really lost. It's sort of like what Gloria said earlier. Boy, I should have listened. And when I say listen, I mean listen and not just hear. Yes, 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 we get it. Thank you. So that did kind of annoy me. But I really think in the end, what this movie comes down to is the acting, which is just so amazing all around. Woody Harrelson's a great actor. Wesley Snipes is phenomenal in this movie. Rosie Perez is just firing on all cylinders. She's phenomenal. I think that is why I'm going to say that the movie does stand the test of time. There are parts where it does go a little bit slow, and I think they could have cut out maybe 10 minutes and made it move a little bit faster. I don't think it's really fair to compare this movie to Uncut Gems. If I had to, I'd probably say I liked Uncut Gems a little better, but I think that's just because that's a phenomenal movie. I think on its own, White Men Can't Jump definitely stands the test of time. I hadn't seen it in ages, and I appreciate you getting me to watch it again, Daron. So thank you.
Yay. Oh my gosh, I'm so surprised. I think you were a bigger fan of the movie than any of us. That was pretty good.
All right, so we are unanimous that White Men Can't Jump does stand the test of time. Daron, I know you wanted to come back next week for another movie, right?
Yes. Do I have to tell you what the movie is?
I mean, I know because you told me, but tell our listeners.
We're going to do 8 Mile, the somewhat fictionalized story of Eminem's rise.
Rise to power?
Greatness? Power?
Hip-hop superstardom?
For you to decide.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in for that. James, you in?
Oh, yeah.
Am I going to be allowed to recite the lyrics to the rap battle in spoken word?
I mean, I think you're going to have to.
Okay, then I'm 100% in.
Nice. All right, so we will see you then next week, Daron. Listeners, we want to hear what you have to say on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Test of Time Pod. I'm going to give a shout out to our listener, Cody Jones, who wrote on Facebook, "Hi guys, big fan. Can you guys do War Games and Crocodile Dundee? Thanks, love your podcast." Cody, we love you. Cody's Facebook profile picture is Leonardo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, which is awesome. Or maybe that's just what you really look like, Cody, in which case, I'm sorry if I offended you.
Yeah, how dare you?
I mean, really. But yes, we will do those movies down the road. So keep listening for those. And everybody, we love hearing from you on social media. And hey, while you're quarantined and you've got nothing else to do, why not go over to Apple Podcasts and write us a nice 5-star review? I mean, you've got nothing better to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.